Hi, I'm Andrew Torgett with Texas History for Teachers. On November 6, 1528, a group of Spaniards washed up on the shore of Texas after being shipwrecked in a terrible storm. They were lost, they were starving, and they were the first Europeans to ever set foot in Texas. And what's amazing is they never even meant to be in Texas. These men were part of an expedition that Spain had sent to Florida in search of gold. But they never found gold. Instead, they had gotten lost, many of them had died, and they'd been making a desperate effort to sail home when a massive storm smashed into them and pushed them into the Texas coast. Now, sadly, most of those Spaniards would not survive, but there were 4 of them, including a man named Cabeza de Vaca, who not only survived, but somehow managed, after 6 long years, to make their way from Texas back to Spanish settlements in modern-day central Mexico. And when Cabeza de Vaca and his 3 companions miraculously returned, they told the Spanish government for the first time about Texas and what they had seen there. So what had they seen? Well, Cabeza de Vaca described a beautiful landscape that stretched from lush forests in East Texas to swampy lowlands along the coast to harsh deserts and bison-filled plains in South and West Texas. He also described many of the different tribes of American Indians, also known as Native Americans, who made their homes in Texas, and word soon spread within the Spanish Empire. And this was a moment that had enormous consequences, because the arrival of Europeans, like Cabeza de Vaca, would absolutely transform Texas, but in ways that you might not always expect. Now, the first thing that happened after de Vaca's report was that Spain launched several more expeditions that explored parts of Texas. During the 1540s, for example, there was a guy named Francisco Vázquez de Coronado who led hundreds of people across the plains and the panhandle of Texas. And at almost the exact same time, there was another Spanish expedition, this one following a guy named Hernando de Soto, who marched through East Texas. And what did they find? Well, they found amazingly rich landscapes and vibrant American Indian tribes, much like Cabeza de Vaca had described. But was that what the Spaniards were looking for? No. The Spaniards had been hoping to find gold or silver in Texas, like they had found with the Aztecs in Mexico and the Incas in Peru. And when they didn't find any gold, Spain decided that Texas was probably not going to be worth very much. So the Spanish left Texas during the 1540s, and they would not come back again until the 1680s, 140 years later. But here's the thing that surprises people. Even though the first Spaniards in Texas were only here briefly, and they soon left for more than a century, they still changed Texas forever. How? Well, the reason is they accidentally left behind 2 really important things that would have massive consequences. The first thing was horrific. They left behind European diseases. You see, whenever the Spanish went exploring, diseases like smallpox went with them. And American Indians in places like Texas had basically no immunities to these diseases, which then spread like wildfire and killed so many people. Today, we estimate that European diseases killed up to 90% of all American Indians in places like Texas. The second thing that Spanish explorers accidentally left behind were horses. Now think about this. There were no horses in North America before Europeans showed up. The first horses in Texas came with Spanish explorers like Coronado. But after those explorers left, some of their horses stayed behind as strays. And soon there were wild horse herds living on the plains of Texas. And that proved transformative for American Indians because taming horses allowed groups like the Comanche and Apaches more effective ways to hunt big animals like bison. Even more important, horses proved to be a tremendously effective military weapon because every warrior on horseback was far more powerful in combat than they were on foot. So access to horses quickly remade tribes like the Apache and later the Comanche into some of the most fearsome military forces in the American Southwest. So, by the time the Spanish came back to Texas in the 1680s, things had changed pretty dramatically. There were now fewer American Indians living in the region than there were when Cabeza de Vaca first arrived, but there were still tens of thousands. And because of the horse, some of those groups were far more powerful than they had been a century before. So, the question we are left with is, Would Spain be able to control the region when they returned to Texas? Or would powerful groups like the Apache and Comanche control them?